The whistle cut through the amphitheater like a blade through silk. 3 cycles after Earth's admission to the Galactic Consortium, Professor Vethkor had learned to expect chaos from human students. He had learned to expect protocol violations. He had learned to expect paperwork. What he had not learned to expect, what 3 cycles of observation had not prepared him for, was the sight of a human woman commanding 2 apex predators with a single sound. The small predators had been mid-chase when she whistled. A cloth toy lay abandoned on the polished floor. Loki, the darker one, had been winning. Thor, the lighter one, had been losing. Teeth had been showing. Growls had been echoing off the amphitheater walls. Students had been pressing themselves against their seats. Appendages frozen, respiratory systems locked in fear responses that had evolved over millions of years. Then the sound came. Sharp, clear, unmistakable. Both puppies froze, not the freeze of prey, the sudden stillness of an animal that has heard a command it respects. Their ears straightened first, swiveling toward the sound source. Then their bodies oriented, heads turning, eyes finding Sarah Chen in the center of the room. Then their legs moved, claws clicking against the polished floor as they scrambled across the distance. They reached her feet and sat. Not cowards sat, tongues lolling, tails wagging, eyes bright. A Valoran student who had been bracing for attack slowly lowered their protective appendages. A Threen representative who had fainted earlier opened their eyes. A Plexian, whose bioluminescent patches had been flashing distress signals, watched the scene unfold with what Vethkor's translator identified as confusion. Professor Vethkor's 3 hearts had been beating asynchronously all morning. 1 heart hammered from the stress of possible litigation. 1 heart fluttered from the anticipation of paperwork. 1 heart had seemed to stop entirely when Sarah first walked in with predators on her shoulders. Now, as he watched the puppies sit at her feet, all 3 hearts synchronized. The sensation was so unfamiliar that Vethkor almost didn't recognize it. His species rarely experienced synchronized cardiac function outside of mating bonds or shared trauma. Yet here he was, standing alone in his observer's alcove, feeling his chest beat as one. Not dominance, he thought, his antennae twitching asymmetrically. Family. He would update the human file later. He would add notes, observations, conclusions. But right now, in the frozen silence of Xenobiology Amphitheater 3, he watched a Threen student wobble under the weight of a puppy perched on their head like a hat, and he understood something his species had spent 3 cycles failing to understand. Humans were dangerously friendly. 3 rotations earlier, when Vethkor had announced the predator presentation assignment, he'd expected the usual anxieties. Xenobiology 301 was his favorite course. He had taught it for 17 cycles. He knew the rhythms of the assignments, the patterns of student anxiety, the predictable ways that young xenobiologists learned to overcome their fear of studying creatures that could kill them. The Valorans would bring holographic recordings of their cliff-dwelling ambush hunters. Safe, sterile, no actual predators in the room. The Threen would present stasis-contained oceanic pursuit predators, specimens frozen in time, preserved in containment fields, incapable of threatening anyone. The Plexians, despite their notorious nervousness, would manage to show neural scans of their world's pack hunters, though they would refuse to be in the same chamber as the actual creatures. Standard protocols, safe protocols, insurable protocols. Then Sarah Chen raised her hand. She sat in the back row, her forward-facing eyes gleaming with what Vethkor had learned to recognize as amusement. The first human to attend the university since Earth's admission. 3 cycles of watching her navigate consortium society like a creature that had never read the fear response manual. "Professor," she said, showing her omnivorous teeth in that unsettling human smile, "I'll need permission to bring living specimens to class." The amphitheater froze. A Valoran student's manipulator appendages locked in place. A Threen representative emitted a sharp sound and collapsed. The Plexians, who were already on edge from the mere mention of predator presentations, began a synchronized trembling that Vethkor had only ever seen during final examination periods. "That is highly irregular, Miss Chen," he'd stammered. His 3 hearts had started beating out of sync immediately. "The safety protocols, the insurance requirements, the liability waivers. I'll take full responsibility," she assured him. "They'll be completely under my control, trust me." Trust, such a human concept. The Valorans had trust. It was built into their clan structures. The Threen had trust. It was encoded in their hive synchronization. Even the Plexians had trust, though theirs was expressed through avoidance rather than approach. But human trust was different. Human trust was reckless. Human trust ignored evidence, overrode instinct, and insisted on connection even when every logical system recommended distance. Nevertheless, Vethkor had granted permission. He had spent the 2 rotations since filing incident reports. He had updated his insurance policies. He had rehearsed his testimony for the inevitable disciplinary review. He had drafted letters of apology to the families of students who might be injured. He had prepared a statement for the consortium's safety board explaining why he had allowed a predator species from a death world to bring living specimens into his classroom. Now, as the chronometer indicated Sarah's presentation time, Vethkor's 3 hearts resumed their asynchronous anxiety. One hammered, one fluttered, one seemed to have stopped entirely. The door slid open. Sarah Chen walked in. On each shoulder sat a predator. The neural implant accessed Earth's database faster than conscious thought. Canis lupus familiaris, domesticated wolf descendants, apex pack hunters, bite force 320 pounds per square inch, jaw pressure sufficient to crush bone, descended from animals that once hunted megafauna across frozen wastelands, elk, bison, aurochs, creatures 3 times their size. The specimens were juveniles. Vethkor's implant estimated their age at approximately 8 standard weeks, small enough to fit on human shoulders, clumsy in their movements, their oversized paws slipping occasionally on the polished floor. But their nature was unmistakable. Sharp teeth visible in panting mouths, claws clicking against Sarah's clothing, eyes tracking every movement in the room with predatory focus. "Everyone meet Thor and Loki," Sarah announced cheerfully. A Valoran student squeaked and dove under their desk. The desk was not designed to accommodate a Valoran's full body, but the student managed anyway, folding their manipulator appendages and pressing themselves into the small space with the desperation of prey caught in open terrain. One of the puppies Thor perhaps yawned. The inside of its mouth was pink, wet, and full of needle-sharp teeth. The Threen representative, who had already fainted once, emitted another sharp sound and collapsed again. The Plexians began trembling in a new pattern, one Vethkor's database did not recognize. He made a note to catalog it later. Fear response, novel variation, induced by proximity to predator species. Vethkor's antennae quivered asymmetrically. His 3 hearts, each responding to a different stressor, began a chaotic rhythm that made his chest ache. He reached for his stylus, prepared to document the inevitable catastrophe. The assignment was to present a predator species from our home world and explain their role in the ecosystem, Sarah continued, gently lifting both animals and cradling them against her chest. The creatures immediately began wiggling. Their tails created a blur of motion. Their bodies squirmed with the boundless energy of juvenile animals everywhere. Wolves and their domestic descendants, dogs, are one of humanity's most successful predator species. She walked down the stairs toward the presentation platform. Vethkor noticed something peculiar, something his database had not predicted, his insurance had not covered, and his incident reports had not anticipated. Despite being carried by a potential prey species, a creature with forward-facing eyes and omnivorous teeth, a creature that should have triggered every anti-predator instinct in the puppy's genetic memory, the predators showed no signs of aggression. Instead, one of them was licking Sarah's face. The other was chewing contentedly on her finger. Her finger, Vethkor noted, was not bleeding. "Wolves are pack hunters with complex social structures," Sarah explained, setting the puppies on the floor. The creatures immediately tumbled over each other, playing. Their play was chaotic, teeth, paws, tails, all moving at once. They rolled across the polished floor, crashed into desk legs, recovered, and resumed their wrestling. Vethkor's implants supplied additional data. Play behavior in juvenile canids serves multiple functions: motor skill development, social bonding, establishment of dominance hierarchies, and practice of hunting techniques. They can coordinate hunts across vast distances, Sarah continued, take down prey many times their size, and survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. From beneath a desk came a muffled Valoran voice. "Then why are you allowing them to attack you?" Sarah laughed. That peculiar human sound echoed off the amphitheater walls. Vethkor's translator offered multiple possible meanings: joy, nervousness, relief, anticipation, or impending violence. Context suggested joy, but his training insisted on caution. "Attack me," Sarah said. "They're playing watch." She produced a small object from her pocket. A cloth toy, Vethkor's visual sensors registered, shaped vaguely like a prey animal. She held it up for the class to see. "This is a toy. Humans make them specifically for predator play." She threw it across the amphitheater. The toy sailed through the air. bounced once on the polished floor, and came to rest against a desk leg. Both puppies immediately gave chase. Their small legs scrambled for purchase on the smooth surface. They skidded, recovered, crashed into each other, tumbled in a tangle of limbs and tails, and continued their pursuit with single-minded determination. "This is their prey drive," Sarah explained, her voice carrying easily through the frozen silence. "The instinct to chase, catch, and kill. In adult wolves, this instinct brings down elk and bison. In puppies, it's directed at toys and each other." Loki reached the toy first. He grabbed it in his mouth and immediately began shaking his head vigorously, a motion Vethkor's implant identified as the kill shake, designed to break the neck of prey. Thor tackled Loki from the side. Both puppies rolled across the floor, growling and tugging at the toy. The sounds, low, rumbling, predatory, made several students retreat further into their seats. A Plexian made a noise, like a deflating respirator. "But here's what makes the human-canine relationship special," Sarah said. Vethkor leaned forward. His antennae, which had been signaling distress, stilled. His hearts, which had been racing, slowed. 30,000 years ago, Sarah said, wolves began living alongside humans. She walked to the center of the amphitheater, stepping around the wrestling puppies. Not as prey, not as predator, as partners. The class was silent. Even the puppies had paused their play, as if sensing the shift in tone. "We don't know exactly how it started," Sarah continued. "Maybe wolves scavenged near human camps. Maybe humans followed wolf packs to find prey. Maybe a wolf cub was found and raised by humans, and that cub's descendants remembered that kindness for generations." She crouched down, bringing herself to the puppy's level. "But we know what happened next. We domesticated them, yes. That's the word we use, but it's not the whole truth." A Valoran student's head emerged from under the desk. "What's the whole truth?" "The whole truth is that they domesticated us too." Sarah reached out and scratched Loki behind the ears. The puppy leaned into her hand, eyes half closed, mouth open in what looked like a smile. "We evolved together. Humans and wolves became a single hunting system. Wolves had speed, strength, and senses we lacked. Humans had endurance, tools, and the ability to plan. Together we could hunt prey that neither species could take alone." She stood up. "We shared our kills. We protected each other's young. We developed a relationship that had no precedent in natural history. Two different predator species, choosing to cooperate instead of compete." The Plexian's bioluminescent patches were pulsing rapidly. That's not how evolution works." "Evolution works however it works," Sarah said, "and in this case it worked through friendship." She whistled. The sound was sharp, clear, and immediate. Both puppies abandoned their play. They ran to her, scrambling across the floor, and sat at her feet. Their tongues lolled out. Their tails wagged so hard their entire hindquarters wiggled. "Humans are persistence hunters," Sarah said, scratching both puppies behind their ears. "We can't outrun prey, but we can outlast them. Wolves hunt in coordinated packs. Together, we became more efficient hunters than either species alone." She crouched down again, bringing herself to the puppy's level. "We shared our kills. We protected each other's young. We became family." The amphitheater was silent. Vethkor realized he had stopped breathing. He forced himself to inhale, to exhale, to remember that he was an observer, not a participant. "The question everyone asks," Sarah said, "is how did humans survive on a death world surrounded by apex predators? The answer is simple. We didn't survive alone. We survived together." She picked up both puppies, holding them like infants. They relaxed completely in her arms, utterly trusting. "These two will grow into 70-pound predators with the instincts and abilities of wolves. They'll be strong enough to knock me down, fast enough to catch most prey animals. Their bite will be powerful enough to break bones." She kissed the top of Thor's head. "And I will trust them completely, because 30,000 years of partnership has taught us both that we're better together than apart." "But what if they attack?" a Plexian whispered. The question hung in the air. Vethkor could see the fear in the Plexian's bioluminescent patterns, genuine, deep-seated, evolved over millions of years of being prey. Sarah didn't flinch. "They won't," she said simply, "because I'll train them, care for them, and love them. In return, they'll protect my family, work alongside us, and love us back." She looked around the room, meeting the many eyes of her terrified classmates. "That's the deal humans made with wolves, and it's a deal we've honored for 300 centuries." Loki had fallen asleep in her arms, snoring softly. Thor was chewing on Sarah's thumb, his tail wagging. "Humans don't just study predators," Sarah concluded. "We live with them. We make them part of our families. We look at the most dangerous creatures on our planet and see potential friends." She stood up. "It's foolish, maybe, But it's also why Earth has so many domestic species. We don't fear the predator in the other. We recognize the predator in ourselves and offer kinship instead. The amphitheater was silent for a long moment. Vethkor counted his heartbeats. 1, 2, 3 still synced. Then, hesitantly, a Valoran student raised a manipulator appendage. "May I touch one?" Sarah's face split into a brilliant smile. Of course, they love meeting new people. The Valoran approached slowly, their appendage extended. Thor sniffed at it, tail wagging. His nose was wet. His breath was warm. His teeth were visible behind slightly parted lips. The Valoran hesitated. "It's okay," Sarah said. "Let him smell you first, that's how dogs say hello." The Valoran held still. Thor sniffed their appendage for several seconds, then licked it. The Valoran made a sound Vethkor had never heard before. Not fear, not surprise, delight. "They're warm," the student said. Sarah laughed, joy this time, Vethkor's translator noted. No nervousness, no impending violence, just joy. "They're mammals, we're both warm-blooded." She looked around the room. "Anyone else?" A Plexian stepped forward, then a Threen, then another Valoran. Soon, a small crowd had gathered around Sarah, tentatively reaching out to touch the predators. The puppies responded with enthusiasm. Thor wagged his tail so hard his entire body shook. Loki wiggled and squirmed and tried to lick every appendage within reach. The Threen representative, who had fainted twice, now had Loki perched on their head. The puppy was looking around the room with the calm authority of a creature that had never doubted its welcome. "Loki," the Threen said, their voice trembling with wonder, "is smiling at me." "That's just how dogs look," Sarah said. "They always look happy. It's one of their best features." She was petting 3 students at once, 2 Valorans and a Plexian, guiding their hands to scratch the puppies in the places they liked best. "Behind the ears," she said. "They love that, and the belly, but only if they roll over first." Vethkor sat in his observer's alcove, watching his terrified students pet apex predators. His 3 hearts were still synced. He reached for his stylus. Time to update the human file. The Valoran student's desk now had claw marks from where they'd grabbed it during the initial panic. Loki had claimed the desk as a nap spot, his small body curled into a tight ball of fur and warmth. The Threen representative was taking neural captures, not of the presentation, not of the data projections, but of the puppy perched on their head like a living hat. A Plexian was crying. Not from fear. Sarah had explained that first, gently, when she noticed the bioluminescent tears tracking down the Plexian's faceplates. "They're not afraid," Sarah had said quietly to Vethkor. "They've never touched something so warm before. Their world doesn't have mammals." Vethkor had made a note. Plexian emotional response, tactile-induced catharsis. First contact with endothermic non-sapient life form triggers unexpected affect. He watched his classroom transform. 3 cycles of tense integration. 3 cycles of humans regarded with the wariness reserved for species that might snap at any moment. 3 cycles of filing incident reports that never became incidents. Of updating humanity's file with clinical observations about their unusual social bonding patterns. Of warning new students that the human in the back row might eat them if provoked. He'd been wrong. Not about the data. The data was accurate. Humans were persistence hunters. They had forward-facing eyes. They had omnivorous teeth. They had evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill them. The threat assessment had been correct by every metric the consortium used. But he'd missed the conclusion. The data had pointed in one direction. He had followed it. He had written reports. He had filed warnings. He had done everything his training had taught him to do when confronted with an apex predator species, newly admitted to galactic civilization. And then Sarah Chen had walked into his classroom with puppies on her shoulders, and every conclusion he had drawn collapsed. The puppies were everywhere now. Thor had claimed the professor's podium, sitting on it like a furry monarch surveying his domain. Loki had migrated from the Valoran's desk to a Plexian's lap to the Threen representative's head and back again. Students were reaching out tentatively, their appendages trembling, then relaxing when the predators responded with tail wags instead of attacks. "How do they know not to bite?" a Valoran asked, their voice still shaky. Their manipulator appendages were extended toward Thor, who was sniffing them with wet-nosed curiosity. Sarah was kneeling on the floor, letting a Plexian student touch Loki's paw. The puppy's small toes spread under the gentle pressure, revealing soft pink pads. "They learn," Sarah said, "the same way you learned not to hit your siblings when you were young." The Valoran blinked all 4 eyes. "But they're predators." "And you're not?" Sarah looked up. Her forward-facing eyes, the eyes of a predator species, met the Valoran's multifaceted gaze. Every species here evolved to survive. Every species here has the capacity for violence. The Valorans have claws, the Threen have venom, the Plexians have a startle response that can incapacitate nearby creatures. She scratched Loki's belly. The puppy's leg kicked involuntarily, a reflexive motion that made the Plexian withdraw their hand in surprise. But you don't attack your classmates. Why? Because you learned not to, because your parents taught you, because your society has rules, because you have something the puppies have, a capacity for learning that overrides instinct. She smiled. Puppies learn the same way. If they bite too hard during play, their littermates yelp and stop playing. They learn that gentle play continues. Hard play ends. Bite inhibition is not born, it's taught. The Valorans slowly extended their appendage again. Thor licked it. Then humans come along and reinforce it for 30,000 years, Sarah continued. Don't bite the hand that feeds you becomes literal. A puppy that bites a human gets a yelp, a withdrawal of attention, a pause in play. A puppy that licks a human gets praise, treats, affection. She held up her hand. Thor was chewing on her thumb, but gently, his teeth barely making contact. He could bite down, he has the muscles for it, the teeth for it, the instinct for it, but he won't, because he learned that my hand is not prey. My hand is the source of food, comfort, and love. The puppy's tail wagged faster. Vethkor's antennae had stopped twitching. His hearts were still synced, all three beating together for the first time in cycles. He should be taking notes. He should be documenting this for the consortium's xenopsychology archive. He should be capturing every word, every reaction, every data point. Instead, he was watching a puppy climb onto a Threen's head. The Threen representative had recovered from their second fainting spell. They were now sitting upright, their neck ridges extended in what Vethkor's database identified as a receptive posture. Loki had claimed the Threen's head as a perch and was looking around the room with the calm authority of a creature that had never doubted its welcome. "I have a question," a voice said from the back of the amphitheater. It was the Plexian who had whispered earlier, the one who had asked, "But what if they attack?" They were still trembling slightly, their bioluminescent patches pulsing in irregular patterns. But they were also reaching out to touch Thor's fur, their appendage moving slowly, carefully, as if approaching something precious. "Yes," Sarah said. "If humans can bond with predators, if you can do what you're doing right now, what else have you bonded with?" Sarah laughed. The sound was warm, genuine, unguarded. "How much time do you have?" The Plexian's patches pulsed faster. "All of it." "Okay." Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor. Loki immediately climbed into her lap. Thor abandoned the podium to join them, squeezing himself between Sarah's legs and his brother. "Let me tell you about the time humans domesticated the aurochs." The class gathered closer. Students left their desks, their protective barriers, their carefully maintained distances. They formed a loose circle around Sarah and the puppies, all eyes on the human who had somehow made apex predators into friends. Vethkor leaned forward. His stylus was moving again. 30,000 years ago, Sarah began, humans lived alongside wolves, but we also lived alongside another species, a much larger species, a species that should have killed us on sight. She was petting both puppies now, her hands moving in practiced patterns. Behind the ears, down the back, under the chin, the puppies squirmed with pleasure. The aurochs, wild cattle, they stood 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed over a ton. They had horns that could impale a human. They had heard instincts that made them aggressive toward anything they didn't recognize. And they lived everywhere humans lived. A Valoran's appendages went slack. "You domesticated something that large. We didn't so much domesticate them as convince them we were useful." Sarah looked up at the class. "Aurochs had predators, wolves mostly. Wolves were also humans' competitors, but humans did something that aurochs couldn't do. Humans killed wolves." She paused, letting that land. The aurochs noticed. Where humans were, wolves weren't. So aurochs began staying near human camps, not close, not trusting, but near, close enough that wolves thought twice before attacking. The Plexian's patches were pulsing steadily now. "That's not domestication, that's mutual avoidance." It was at first, but then something happened. Sarah's hands stilled on the puppies. A human found a calf. Maybe its mother had died. Maybe it had been abandoned. Maybe the human had killed the mother and felt something they couldn't name when they saw the calf. She looked down at the puppies. The human didn't eat the calf. They brought it back to camp, they fed it, they protected it, and when the calf grew up, it didn't run from humans, it stayed. The amphitheater was silent. That calf had calves. Some of them inherited its tolerance for humans. The humans, in turn, protected those calves from wolves, fed them during lean seasons. Let them graze near the camp where predators wouldn't go. Sarah shrugged. It wasn't love, not at first, it was mutual convenience. The aurochs got protection. Humans got a stable food source that didn't require chasing across the savannah for 3 days. Over thousands of generations, the aurochs that tolerated humans reproduced. The ones that didn't. And then, the Plexian asked, and then we spent 10,000 years breeding them. The ones that gave milk got to live. The ones that had gentle temperaments got to reproduce. The ones that didn't try to kill us when we got close became the ancestors of every cow on Earth. She smiled. Eventually, we turned a 6-foot-tall murder machine into an animal that will let you milk it while it chews cud, and ignores you completely. The Threen representative, who still had Loki perched on their head, made a sound that might have been laughter. Their throat sac vibrated in a pattern Vethkor had never observed outside of mating displays. That's not domestication, the Threen said. That's genetic warfare. You bred the aggression out of them. You selected for compliance. You turned a wild animal into a slave. No, Sarah said. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something that made Vethkor's antennae twitch. That's not what happened. She stood up, puppies still in her arms. The aurochs went extinct. The wild ones, the ones that never bonded with humans, they're gone. But their descendants, the cows, the cattle, the billions of them that live on Earth today, they're not slaves. They're partners. The Threen's throat sac vibrated again, but this time the pattern was different. Skepticism, Vethkor's translator, suggested. Partners, you eat them. We do, and they eat the grass we plant for them, and they live in fields we protect from predators, and they have calves we help deliver, and when a disease sweeps through the herd, we vaccinate them, and when a drought comes, we bring them water. Sarah's voice was steady. Is that slavery, or is that a bargain? Your species survives because of us. Our species survives because of you. The Threen was silent. Every domestic animal on Earth made a deal with humans, Sarah continued. Not consciously, not through negotiation, but through 30,000 years of trial and error, of mutual benefit, of learning that we're better together than apart. She looked around the room. The cow gets food, shelter, protection from predators. Humans get milk, meat, leather. Both species get something they couldn't get alone. She crouched down and set the puppies on the floor. They immediately began wrestling again, teeth and paws and tails in a tangled ball of fur. That's the pattern. That's always been the pattern. Humans find a species that might kill us and we ask, what can we do for each other? Vethkor's stylus was moving faster than his thoughts. He was recording everything. The puppy's behavior, the student's reactions, Sarah's impossible calm. But there was something he wasn't recording. Something he only noticed now, watching Sarah interact with the class over the past hour. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to convince them. She wasn't making arguments. She wasn't presenting data. She was just being. When a Valoran student's appendage jerked back in surprise because Loki had licked them, Sarah didn't say, it's okay, or don't be afraid. She just kept scratching the other puppy's ear. Her lack of reaction was the reaction. The students saw her unbothered calm, and their own fear quieted. When a Plexian's patches flashed with anxiety, Sarah didn't reassure them with words. She simply held out her hand, palm up, and waited. The Plexian reached out, touched her palm, and after a moment their patches slowed. She's modeling behavior, Vethkor realized. The same way the puppies learned from their littermates. The same way humans have always taught each other, not through instruction, but through example. He added a note to the human file. Section 17C, Social Learning Transference. Humans didn't just bond with predators, they taught other species how to bond with predators by simply being unafraid. That was the dangerous part. Not the teeth, not the claws, not the bite force. The example. May I ask something else? The Plexian said. They had stopped trembling entirely now. Their bioluminescent patches were pulsing in what Vethkor's database identified as curiosity rather than fear. A steady, rhythmic glow that suggested focused attention. Of course, Sarah said. What do the puppies protect you from? Sarah's hand stopped moving, just for a moment. Her fingers froze on Loki's fur, and Vethkor saw something cross her face, something he couldn't identify, vulnerability, perhaps. Or recognition. Then she resumed scratching. Everything, she said quietly. They protect me from everything. The amphitheater was silent. Even the puppies seemed to sense the shift in tone. Loki stopped squirming. Thor stopped chewing. Not because they're fierce, Sarah continued. They will be when they're grown, 70 pounds of muscle and bone and instinct. They'll be able to knock me down, chase down prey, defend our home from intruders. She looked down at the puppies. But right now, they're 8 weeks old. They can barely walk without tripping over their own feet. They can't protect me from anything physical. The Plexian's patches pulse slowly. Then what do they protect you from? Loneliness? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. From the weight of being the only human in a room full of species that look at me like I might eat them. She swallowed. From forgetting that I belong to something. From forgetting that somewhere on Earth, there are billions of humans who feel the same way I do, who look at predators and see friends, who would rather be kind than safe. The Plexian's patches had stopped pulsing entirely. They were steady now, constant. That's not protection, the Plexian said. No, Sarah agreed. It's not, but it's what protection becomes when you've had 30,000 years to practice. Vethkor set down his stylus. He had written 23 pages of notes. He had cataloged the puppy's behaviors, the students' reactions, Sarah's every word. He had documented the Valoran's progression from fear to curiosity to delight. He had recorded the Threen's shift from fainting to laughter. He had noted the Plexian's emotional journey from trembling to calm to wonder. But none of it captured what he was feeling. His hearts were synced, all three, beating together in a rhythm that felt almost warm. He looked around the amphitheater. The Valoran student who had dived under their desk was now sitting with Loki in their lap. The puppy was asleep, his small body rising and falling with each breath. The Valoran was stroking his fur with a gentle appendage, their expression soft. The Threen representative was taking neural captures, not of the puppy on their head this time, but of the Valoran, of their soft expression, of their gentle touch. The Threen was documenting the moment when fear became love. The Plexians had stopped trembling entirely. They were gathered around Thor, their bioluminescent patches pulsing in slow, synchronized patterns. One of them was humming, a low, resonant sound that Vethkor had never heard from a Plexian before. The predators had become the center of the room, not because they were feared, because they were loved. That's the difference, Vethkor thought. Other species study predators from a distance. They observe, they document, they keep their distance. Humans invite predators into their homes, they share their food, they sleep beside them, they make them family. He picked up his stylus again. Section 1, he wrote, New entry, delete the old one. Humanity does not conquer predators through strength or technology. They befriend them. They make them family. They look at the deadliest creatures on their planet and see potential allies. He paused. This may explain their rapid adaptation to consortium society. They see potential allies everywhere, even in those who should be enemies. Professor, Vethkor looked up. Sarah was standing at the base of his observer's alcove. The puppies were still in her arms. She must have retrieved them while he was writing. Both were asleep now, their small bodies warm and still. Yes, Miss Chen. I noticed you've been taking notes the whole time. She tilted her head, forward-facing, eyes meeting his. Do you have any questions? He had 1,000 questions. He had 100 questions. He had one question. How do you do it? He asked. How do you trust something that could kill you? Sarah considered the question for a long moment. The amphitheater was quiet. The students had stopped moving. Even the cleaning drones, which had been preparing to enter, seemed to be waiting. I don't trust them not to kill me, she said finally. I trust them not to want to. There's a difference. She adjusted her grip on the sleeping puppies. Trust isn't the absence of danger. It's not safety. It's not certainty. Trust is the acknowledgement of danger and the choice to bond anyway. She looked down at the puppies. These two could hurt me. When they're older, they'll have the strength to cause real damage. They'll have the instincts to hunt, to kill, to fight. I know that. I've always known that. Her voice was soft, but I also know that they won't, because I've earned their trust, and they've earned mine. And 30,000 years of partnership has taught us that trust is worth more than safety. Vethkor's hearts beat together, once, twice, 3 times. I understand, he said. Do you? Sarah asked. I think I'm beginning to. The chronometer indicated the end of the presentation period. Sarah had been speaking for over an hour. The class had run long, 23 minutes over by Vethkor's count. Not a single student had checked the time. One last thing, Sarah said, turning to face the class. She set the puppies on the floor. They woke up immediately, blinking sleep from their eyes, tails beginning to wag. The assignment was to explain the ecological balance between hunter and prey. I've told you about wolves and humans, about aurochs and cows, about 30,000 years of partnership. She looked down at the puppies. But the truth is simpler than all of that. The truth is that humans have a word for what we did with wolves. We call it friendship. The amphitheater was silent. We don't befriend predators because it's logical. We don't do it because it's safe. We do it because we're lonely. Because we look at another species and see something worth knowing. Because we'd rather have allies than enemies. She took a breath, because being alone is scarier than being eaten. Then she whistled. The sound cut through the silence, sharp, clear, unmistakable. Thor scrambled down from the Threen student's head. Loki bounced awake in Sarah's arms. Both puppies oriented toward her, ears forward, tails wagging, bodies still. Two apex predators, obedient to a sound. The class applauded. Vethkor watched the applause spread. The Valorans clapped with their manipulator appendages, the sound sharp and rhythmic. The Threen made percussive sounds with their throat sacs, a deep resonance that vibrated through the floor. The Plexians pulsed their bioluminescent patches in synchronized waves, their bodies glowing with warm light. Sarah was bowing slightly, puppies still in her arms, a smile on her face. This was the moment he would document. This was the moment that would change the consortium's understanding of humanity. Not the whistle, not the obedience, not the command. That was impressive, yes. It was dramatic. It was the kind of moment that would make headlines, that would be studied in xenopsychology courses for cycles to come. But it wasn't the core. The core was what happened after. The students were still applauding, not because they were afraid, not because they were following protocol, not because they were performing, because they were genuinely, viscerally delighted. They're happy, Vethkor realized. They're happy to have met the predators. He watched a Valoran student wipe tears from their multifaceted eyes. He watched a Threen representative take one final neural capture of the puppy on their head. He watched a Plexian hum that low, resonant sound again. Contentment, he realized, not fear. They had walked into his classroom afraid of predators. They were leaving having loved them. He wrote his final note of the session. Humans don't just study predators, they live with them. They make them part of their families. They look at the most dangerous creatures on their planet and see potential friends. He paused. Then they teach everyone else to do the same. The class ended. Students filed out slowly, reluctant to leave. Several asked Sarah if they could visit the puppies again. She gave them her contact information and told them to schedule visits through the university's xenozoology department. Make them do paperwork, she said with a grin. It's good for them. The Threen representative left with Loki's fur stuck to their head ridges. They didn't seem to mind. In fact, they were walking with a confidence Vethkor had never observed in them before. The Valoran student was already researching adoption protocols for their home world. Vethkor heard them asking a classmate about interstellar pet transport regulations. The Plexians were talking excitedly about warm bonding potential and whether their species could host Earth mammals in their climate-controlled habitats. Vethkor sat alone in his observer's alcove, reviewing his notes. He had written 27 pages of observations, questions, and a growing sense that he had fundamentally misunderstood humanity for 3 cycles. He deleted the old human file, all of it, the clinical observations about forward-facing eyes and omnivorous teeth and persistence hunting, the warnings about apex predator status and death world origins, the threat assessments and cautionary notes and liability waivers. All of it gone. Then he started fresh. Section 1, Summary. Humanity is a predator species. This is not their most notable feature. He wrote for another hour, filling the new file with observations about social bonding, trust formation, and the peculiar human tendency to see allies where other species saw threats. He documented the puppies. He documented the students. He documented Sarah's impossible calm in the face of institutional fear. At the bottom of the final page, he added a note. Humans are perhaps the most dangerous predator of all, not because of their hunting ability, but because they can turn other predators into friends. We should be very grateful they prefer cooperation to conquest. He read the note 3 times. Then he added one more word at the end. Dangerously friendly. The amphitheater was empty now. The lights had dimmed to their nighttime setting. The cleaning drones were already moving across the floor, wiping away the evidence of puppy claws and student fear and tears of wonder. Vethkor stood up to leave. He had filed no incident reports. Not one. His insurance premiums would remain unchanged. His tenure file would contain no disciplinary reviews. His testimony would not be needed. He should be relieved. He was relieved. But something else was there too, something he couldn't quite name. He looked at the podium where Thor had sat, at the spot on the floor where Loki had fallen asleep, at the desk where a Valoran student had learned not to be afraid. They didn't just learn about predators today, he thought. They learned about themselves. He closed his notebook. He gathered his stylus. He walked toward the door. The door slid open. Sarah Chen was standing there. The puppies were in her arms, both awake now, their tails wagging at the sight of him. Loki's tongue lolled out. Thor's ears perked forward. "Professor, you're still here." "I was reviewing my notes." "Good notes." He considered the question. "Changing notes." Sarah smiled. "That's the best kind." She stepped into the amphitheater, and the puppies squirmed with excitement. Loki yawned, displaying needle-sharp teeth. Thor wagged his tail so hard his entire body wiggled. "The class went well," Vethkor said. "The class went perfectly." Sarah looked around the empty room. Her eyes lingered on the desks, the podium, the spot where the Plexians had gathered. "They're going to remember today, not the facts, the feeling." "Is that what matters?" "The feeling is what matters." She was quiet for a moment. "Facts change, feelings stay." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Professor, the thing you couldn't write down, the thing you felt." Vethkor's antennae twitched. "Yes." Sarah turned back. Her forward-facing eyes were soft in the dim light. "That's the thing humans have been feeling for 30,000 years. The thing we felt when wolves first sat beside our fires. The thing we felt when cows let us milk them. The thing we feel when we look at a predator and see a friend." She shifted the puppies in her arms. "It's not trust, it's not love, it's something older than both. It's the knowledge that we're not alone." She walked out. The door slid closed behind her. Vethkor stood alone in the amphitheater for a long time. His three hearts were beating together. Still, after everything, he thought about the puppies, about the students, about the whistle that had commanded apex predators. But mostly, he thought about what Sarah had said at the end. The knowledge that we're not alone. He opened the human file one more time. At the very bottom, below all the notes and observations and conclusions and warnings and revisions, he added a single line. Making friends had always been humanity's greatest talent, and the consortium was only beginning to understand how dangerous that made them. He closed the file. The amphitheater was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, he heard a puppy bark.